Welcome to our deep dive into the world of tariffs. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tariffs, that sounds about as interesting as watching paint dry in a library basement. And you'd be right if we were talking about, say, the history of tariffs on paper clips. But we're not. We're talking about a system that, much like a koala bear, seems deceptively cuddly from a distance, but could disembowel you with its razor-sharp claws if you're not careful. Today we'll explore the different types of tariffs, their purposes, and the effects they have on economies and consumers. Because, believe it or not, these seemingly boring little taxes have the power to make or break industries, spark trade wars, and even influence the price of that morning cup of coffee you cherish so much. So buckle up, because we're about to delve into a world where economics meets international intrigue, where percentages become weapons, and where understanding the difference between an ad valorem and a specific tariff might just be the key to understanding the global economy as a whole. First up, we have the ad valorem tariff. This little beauty is calculated as a percentage of the imported goods value. Think of it like a sales tax, but instead of going to your local government to fix potholes, it goes to the government of the country you're importing from. So, let's say you're importing a crate of artisanal doorknobs from a country that loves a good doorknob tariff. If the crate's value is $1,000 and the ad valorem tariff is 10%, you'll be shelling out an extra $100 to get those doorknobs through customs. Now, you might be thinking, 10%? That's not so bad, and you'd be right, relatively speaking, but remember, this is on top of the original price of the goods, shipping costs, and possibly even a hefty bribe to a customs official who really loves doorknobs. The point is, these seemingly small percentages can add up quickly, making imported goods significantly more expensive and potentially putting a damper on your dreams of becoming an international doorknob tycoon. Next, we have the specific tariff. This one's a bit more straightforward, like a bear trap compared to the ad valorem tariff's elaborate snare system. It's a fixed fee charged per unit of the imported good, regardless of its value. So, whether you're importing a diamond-encrusted smartphone or a sack of potatoes, you'll be paying the same flat fee per unit. Let's say the fee is $5 per kilogram of sugar. Now, if you're importing a small bag of sugar for your morning coffee, that $5 might not seem like a big deal. But let's say you're a multinational candy manufacturer importing tons of sugar every year. Suddenly that $5 per kilogram starts to look a lot more like a $5,000 per ton, and then a $5 million per 1,000 tons, and so on. You get the idea. These specific tariffs can really add up, especially for businesses importing large quantities of goods. And just like the ad valorem tariff, they can make imported goods more expensive, potentially impacting prices for consumers and businesses alike. And then we have the compound tariff, which is basically the love child of the ad valorem and specific tariffs. It's like taking a bite of a delicious cookie only to discover it's filled with toothpaste. You're getting hit with both a percentage-based tariff and a fixed fee per unit. So imagine you're importing a shipment of those fancy electric scooters everyone's riding these days. Let's say there's a compound tariff of 5% of the scooter's value plus $20 per unit. If each scooter is worth $500, you're looking at a 5% ad valorem tariff of $25 per scooter plus the $20 specific tariff for a grand total of $45 in tariffs per scooter. Now multiply that by a few hundred scooters and you're looking at a hefty sum that could have been spent on, I don't know, a lifetime supply of helmet stickers. The point is, compound tariffs are like the double whammy of the tariff world. They can make imported goods significantly more expensive, potentially impacting both consumers and businesses, and making international trade a real pain in the neck. Chapter 4. Protect domestic industries shielding the nest. Now, why do governments even bother with these tariffs? Well, one reason is to protect domestic industries. Think of it like building a big, beautiful wall around your country's economy, but instead of concrete and barbed wire, it's made of import taxes. By making imported goods more expensive, tariffs can make domestically produced goods more appealing to consumers. It's like putting a buy local sign on everything produced within a country's borders. Of course, this assumes that the domestic industry can actually meet the demand for those goods. If not, consumers might end up paying higher prices for lower quality goods, all in the name of protecting domestic industries. Chapter 5. Generate government revenue, show me the money. Another reason governments love tariffs is that they generate revenue. It's like a tax on foreign goods that helps fund government programs and services. Think of it like a toll booth for imported goods, except instead of paying for a road, you're paying for, well, whatever the government decides to spend it on. Now, some might argue that this is just a roundabout way of taxing consumers, and they wouldn't be entirely wrong, but hey, at least it's a way to get people to indirectly contribute to the national coffers. Of course, the effectiveness of tariffs as a revenue source depends on various factors, such as the volume of imports and the tariff rates themselves. But for some governments, it's a significant source of income that helps keep the lights on, and maybe even fund some questionable pet projects. Chapter 6. Retaliatory measures, the trade war tango. But here's where things get really interesting. Sometimes countries use tariffs as retaliatory measures in response to perceived unfair trade practices by other countries. It's like a game of economic chicken where each country keeps raising tariffs until someone backs down. Picture this. Country A imposes tariffs on country B's steel exports, claiming unfair subsidies. Country B, not one to back down from a trade spat, retaliates with tariffs on country A's agricultural products, and so on and so forth until both countries are locked in a trade war that benefits no one. These trade wars can have significant consequences for global trade, disrupting supply chains, increasing prices for consumers, and even damaging diplomatic relations between countries. It's like a game of economic Jenga, where each tariff is a block pulled from the tower, and no one knows when the whole thing will come crashing down. Governments might also use tariffs to regulate their trade balance, which is the difference between a country's imports and exports. Think of it like a giant economic seesaw, with imports on one side and exports on the other. If a country is importing more than it's exporting, which is known as a trade deficit, it might impose tariffs to make imported goods more expensive and encourage domestic consumption. This, in theory, should help tip the seesaw back towards balance. Conversely, if a country is exporting more than it's importing, known as a trade surplus, it might reduce or eliminate tariffs to make its goods more competitive in foreign markets. This can help maintain that favorable trade balance and keep those exports flowing. Of course, manipulating trade balances through tariffs is a delicate dance. Too much intervention and you risk retaliation from other countries or even damage to your own domestic industries. It's like trying to balance a bowling pin on your nose while riding a unicycle, difficult to do well and potentially disastrous if you fail. Now let's talk about the impact of tariffs on consumers. Remember that seemingly insignificant ad valorem tariff on those artisanal doorknobs? Well, guess what? That extra cost is usually passed down to you, the consumer, in the form of higher prices. Think of it like this. Tariffs are like hidden taxes on imported goods. They increase the cost of importing those goods, and businesses in turn pass those costs along to consumers. So that fancy imported cheese you love? Yep, tariffs might be why it costs an arm and a leg. This can have a ripple effect throughout the economy, as higher prices for imported goods can lead to higher prices for domestic goods as well. It's like a game of economic hot potato, where no one wants to be left holding the potato of higher costs. But it's not just consumers who feel the pinch of tariffs. Businesses that rely on imported materials or components for their products can also face increased costs. Imagine you're a car manufacturer that relies on imported steel. Now imagine that steel suddenly becomes more expensive due to tariffs. Those increased costs can eat into your profit margins, forcing you to raise prices, cut costs, or even lay off workers. It's like trying to build a house with bricks that keep getting more expensive. It puts a strain on your budget and can even threaten the entire project. And it's not just the businesses that directly import goods that are affected. The ripple effects of tariffs can be felt throughout the supply chain, impacting businesses of all sizes and industries. It's like a game of economic dominoes, where one falling domino can trigger a chain reaction that affects everyone. And then, of course, there's the granddaddy of them all, trade wars. These occur when countries engage in a tit-for-tat exchange of tariffs and other trade barriers. escalating tensions and disrupting global trade. Imagine two children in a sandbox, each building a sandcastle. Suddenly, one child throws a handful of sand at the other's castle. The other child retaliates, and soon they're locked in a full-blown sand war, destroying each other's creations. That's essentially what a trade war is, but with real economic consequences. These wars can lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced choices, and even shortages of essential goods. They can also damage diplomatic relations between countries, creating a climate of mistrust and hostility. In short, trade wars are bad for everyone involved. They're like a lose-lose scenario where the only winners are the lawyers and lobbyists who profit from the conflict. Thanks for watching. We hope this video helped you understand the complex world of tariffs. It's a world where seemingly small percentages can have a big impact, where governments try to balance competing interests, and where the law of unintended consequences reigns supreme. So the next time you hear about tariffs in the news, remember that it's not just about abstract economic theories. It's about real people, real businesses, and real consequences. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more informative content. And remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding the often confusing world of international trade.